The glass doors of Sovereign Bank's Midtown branch whooshed open with a mechanical sigh, letting in the early morning chill and the calm confidence of Dr. Naomi Ellis. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished marble tiles, each step echoing with the silent authority of a woman who had climbed every rung of corporate America, alone. Behind her walked Mia, her assistant, clutching a leather briefcase as if it were sacred. Inside it sat $50,000 in banded hundreds, a symbolic gesture for a same-day transfer, not just a transaction, but the final move before that night's monumental $2 billion partnership signing. The line at Branch 12 was long, but Naomi didn't mind waiting. She was used to the slow grind of success. What she wasn't used to was the chill that wrapped around her, not from the air conditioning, but from the atmosphere, sterile, watchful, restrained. Every head didn't turn at her presence, but a few did. A white man in line ahead glanced over his shoulder, then looked again, longer than necessary. A bank guard near the entrance straightened subtly as she passed, fingers twitching near his belt radio. Naomi noticed it all. She always did. Being black and female in power meant reading every room before you entered it, and surviving despite what you saw. Still, she remained composed, her shoulders square, her chin held high. Her navy blue tailored suit fit like armor. Her natural curls framed her face, and a small gold pin, her company's logo, sat proud on her lapel. Mia whispered, "Should I go up and explain?" Naomi shook her head gently. "We're not here to explain. We're here to bank." At the front counter, a white man in his 20s, name tag reading, Colin, moved mechanically through customers. His tone was clipped, his smile non-existent. He barely looked at the older man depositing a check. Naomi studied his movements. Every action seemed rushed, as if the people before him were obstacles instead of clients. She hoped, just for today, that professionalism would win. When her turn arrived, she stepped forward with grace, placing her ID and Sovereign Black Business Premier card on the counter. Colin glanced up, barely registering her. Then his eyes fell to the name on the card. His lips tightened. "Do you have an account with us?" he asked flatly. Naomi paused, then nodded once. "Yes. That card is linked to my corporate business account." Naomi Ellis, CEO of Any Solutions. His fingers tapped on the keyboard, verifying. "And what's the purpose of your visit today?" "I need to deposit cash and initiate a wire transfer for a corporate transaction. The amount is $50,000. She gave a slight smile. "All bills are clean and stacked for easy counting." She reached into her leather handbag and slowly, deliberately, placed the clear banded stacks on the counter. 5 bundles. Crisp hundreds. Institutional clarity. Colin blinked. Then scoffed. "We don't usually handle this kind of cash," he said, his voice edged with something that didn't belong in customer service. Suspicion? Disgust? Naomi kept her voice even. "I've done it before. Several times. At this branch." He picked up the ID again, stared at it longer than necessary, then looked back at her. "Where'd the money come from?" It wasn't just the question. It was how he asked it. As if she were hiding something. As if she needed to be interrogated. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "That's irrelevant, isn't it? My account is in good standing. I'm making a deposit. I'm going to have to call my manager," he muttered. A few people behind her shifted uncomfortably. Mia's fingers twitched around the briefcase. The woman next in line, mid-40s, blonde, craned her neck to look at Naomi's money, then frowned as if she'd witnessed a crime. Naomi's jaw tightened. "Please do," she said. "We wouldn't want protocol ignored." Colin disappeared into the back room, and for a moment the line froze. Eyes stared. Whispers circulated. Naomi kept her face neutral. Not angry. Not upset. Simply unreadable. She'd learned long ago that black women were expected to shrink or explode. She chose neither. When Colin returned, he didn't bring a manager. Just more audacity. "My supervisor said we'll have to document this manually," he said. "You'll need to explain the source of funds. For reporting." "That's not required for this amount," Naomi said calmly. "And this account has cleared much larger deposits." "Well, that's our internal policy." "Can I see the policy?" Colin's jaw flexed. "Ma'am, I need you to step aside if you're going to argue." There it was. Ma'am. The word that meant everything and nothing. Polite, but wielded like a dagger when spoken with that tone. Naomi didn't move. Colin reached for the stack of cash and shoved it back across the counter. One bundle slipped. Hit the edge. Fell. It landed on the floor with a dull slap, splaying open as if to humiliate her. A woman in line gasped audibly. Mia moved quickly to retrieve it, but Naomi raised her hand. "Don't." She slowly bent down herself, picked up the bundle, and stood again, taller this time. She looked Colin directly in the eyes. "Do you know who I am?" she asked softly. Colin's smirk was instant. "Doesn't matter. You're causing a scene." Naomi nodded slowly. "No," she said, voice like silk over steel. "You just did." And in that frozen moment, with bills back in hand and dignity unshaken, the future of a $2 billion partnership began to shift, not because of paperwork, but because of arrogance. The line stood silent. Naomi turned without another word and walked out, heels echoing across the marble like thunder. And somewhere deep in the structure of wealth and power, something cracked. Naomi's heels struck pavement as she exited the bank, each step a deliberate rhythm of restraint. Midtown bustled around her, honking taxis, suited professionals, morning joggers, but her world had shrunk to a silent tunnel. Mia followed closely, glancing at Naomi's face. Not rage. Not defeat. Just calculation. They entered the back seat of Naomi's Tesla Model S. The doors closed with a soft hiss. Mia opened her mouth, but Naomi raised a hand. Silence. Her eyes were locked ahead. As the car eased into traffic, she finally spoke. "Pull the sovereign contract," Naomi said. "I want every clause. Especially reputational conduct clauses." Mia tapped quickly on her tablet. "You're thinking of halting the deal?" Naomi turned, slow and focused. "I'm thinking of why I was just treated like a criminal while trying to give them my money." Mia nodded. Colin's behavior was unacceptable. But it wasn't sovereign as a whole. Naomi's brow arched. "Isn't it?" The word sat heavy between them. Back in the glass tower that was Any Solutions headquarters, Naomi's presence always shifted energy. Executives straightened. Interns whispered. Her office sat on the top floor, with panoramic views of the city and shelves filled with awards, patents, and framed news articles. Forbes, The Relentless Rise of Naomi Ellis. Fast Company, Black Woman CEO Changing AI. She moved through the lobby like royalty. The receptionist greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, Dr. Ellis. Good morning, Ava. Inside the executive conference room, her team was already waiting, CTO, COO, General Counsel, and the Director of Communications. They were prepping final assets for the $2 billion joint venture deal with Polaris Tech, a German conglomerate expanding into U.S. markets. Sovereign Bank, Colin's employer, was Polaris's longtime financial partner and the custodian of several key accounts in the venture. Naomi stood at the head of the table. Her tone was composed. I had an interaction at Branch 12 this morning. It was disrespectful, racially charged, and humiliating. The room shifted. How bad? Asked Layla, the general counsel. Naomi met her eyes. Bad enough to reconsider everything. Wait, said Ron, the CTO. The sovereign bank you're talking about is the same sovereign holding Polaris's escrow and funding instruments, Naomi finished. Silence. She placed the stack of bills on the table, still in its bands. This is what caused the problem. I went in as a CEO. I was treated like a threat. Do we have footage? Layla asked. Mia nodded. I requested it already. Legally, if we appear in the footage, we can request a copy. Also, a woman in line filmed part of it. Her phone was visible. Naomi's voice hardened. Good. I want everything documented. By noon, the incident was already being whispered about in investor circles. Someone from Polaris's team messaged Mia, heard Dr. Ellis had an issue at Sovereign. Can we clarify? Mia showed Naomi the message. Naomi smirked. Polite curiosity. Wrapped in corporate worry. She dictated the reply, yes, there was an incident. Once we review internally, we'll advise how we choose to proceed. Then she said, schedule a call with Polaris. I want them to hear this from me. Not from rumor. 2 hours later, Naomi was on a video call with Marcus Voll, Polaris's executive chairman. He was a calculated man with silver hair, a German accent as crisp as pressed linen, and eyes that missed nothing. Naomi, he greeted warmly, I hope your morning has been smooth. It's been illuminating, she replied. Marcus, I want to inform you of a situation at Sovereign Bank this morning. She explained, factually, without dramatics. The teller. The tone. The cash on the floor. The refusal of basic respect. Marcus's expression never changed. This is unfortunate, he said. It's not unfortunate. It's institutional, Naomi corrected. I was treated like I didn't belong in my own success. That's not a fluke. That's a pattern reinforced by comfort and silence. I hope you understand Sovereign is merely a partner to us. We do not endorse individual employee behavior. Naomi leaned slightly forward. But you endorse them with billions in trust. And that trust reflects on you. What happened this morning wasn't just personal, it was structural. And I have no interest in building something worth billions atop rot. Marcus's face shifted. Not offended, just alerted. I will speak with the bank, he said. You should, Naomi said. But the real question is, why didn't this alarm you before today? Marcus blinked. Naomi ended the call shortly after. No raised voice. No threats. Just the weight of truth hanging in the space between power and silence. That evening, Naomi received a call from Sovereign's regional VP. She declined. Then another, from corporate headquarters. Mia looked at her, phone blinking. Naomi said calmly, "Let them sweat." By then, the footage had already started to spread. A blurry phone video. A white teller gesturing sharply. A black woman standing motionless. A bundle of money falling. A stunned silence. Twitter lit up. Hashtag "See on the floor" trended within the hour. Activists reposted. Business owners reposted. Celebrities reposted. Within minutes, Naomi Ellis became a symbol, and Sovereign Bank, a case study in corporate bias. The next morning's news featured clips of the video alongside headlines. Tech CEO disrespected at major bank, calls for accountability rise. $2B deal jeopardized after racial incident. Naomi Ellis responds to Sovereign with silence, and it's deafening. At her desk, Naomi scrolled briefly through the coverage, then closed the screen. She looked out the window at a city she'd conquered, brick by brick, deal by deal. This wasn't the story she'd planned to make that day. But maybe, just maybe, it was the one that needed to be told. It wasn't supposed to escalate. Colin had no idea who Naomi was. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. In his mind, she was just another customer with an attitude and an unusual amount of cash. Not a CEO. Not a keynote speaker. Not a pioneer. Just a woman with expensive shoes and skin that didn't match the usual clientele who walked in to deposit $50,000 in clean, banded bills. As he returned from the back room, the tension around his jaw had tightened. A small crowd of customers now stood behind Naomi, their eyes scanning her face, her outfit, her money. "Ma'am," he said sharply, stepping back behind the counter, "I told you, our policy requires verification. We can't proceed without source documentation and management review." Naomi didn't flinch. "Show me the written policy." "It's internal," Colin replied, refusing to meet her eyes. "You'll have to take it up with corporate." "You mean the same corporate where I have 3 institutional accounts and a revolving credit line larger than your entire branch's quarterly volume?" Colin stiffened. The words didn't sound like a bluff. They sounded like facts. She placed her Sovereign Business Premier card on the counter again, next to the ID. "Scan it again. And this time, read what it says beneath my name." But Colin didn't move. Instead, with the eyes of half the room watching, he pushed the bundles of cash back across the counter in a careless gesture meant to end the conversation. It didn't. One bundle, clean, precise, wrapped in a transparent bank strap, hit the edge of the marble counter and spun to the floor. It landed with a flat, unceremonious slap. The room gasped. For a moment, time slowed. Naomi stood frozen. Mia inhaled sharply behind her. A man 2 customers back murmured, "Did he just?" No one moved. Naomi lowered her gaze to the cash. It wasn't just money. It was proof, visible, undeniable, of what she had built. Of what she had survived. And now, it lay on the floor like contraband. Colin didn't apologize. He didn't speak. He simply stared, arms crossed, eyes defiant. Daring her to react. And for a fraction of a second, Naomi considered it. The raised voice. The confrontation. The storm. But then, she breathed in. She bent down, not quickly, not angrily, but with poise. She picked up the bundle of money, dusted off the strap gently as if reclaiming something sacred, and rose. The lobby had gone utterly silent. Phones were out. 2 people were recording now, subtly but intentionally. Naomi noticed. She made sure Colin noticed too. She faced him with the kind of calm that made people nervous. "Do you know who I am?" she asked again, voice like velvet laced with steel. Colin hesitated, trying to mask the fact that now he wasn't sure anymore. His smirk from earlier faltered slightly. "It doesn't matter," he muttered, but his confidence was slipping. Naomi gave a faint smile. "That's where you're wrong. It matters deeply." She turned her eyes toward the security camera above. "And it will matter to your corporate office when they review the footage." Then she looked toward the lobby. "To everyone standing here," she said clearly, her voice rising just enough to carry, "I want you to remember what you saw. Not just the money on the floor, but who dropped it." People shifted uncomfortably. No one looked away. Several heads nodded slowly. Colin flushed. "Ma'am, I need you to leave if you're going to disrupt." Naomi raised a finger. Not shouting. Not begging. Just asserting. "You disrupted me. You disrespected me. You assumed something about me because of what I look like and what I carry. But what I carry," she held up the stack, "is not just money, it's ownership. And you dropped it." With that, she placed the stack back into her briefcase, calmly zipped it, and closed it with finality. She didn't yell. She didn't curse. She just walked away. Each step to the door felt like thunder. Her heels clicked across the marble floor, now echoing off the walls like warning shots. The bank remained still behind her. Outside, Naomi paused on the steps. Mia caught up, visibly shaken. "Are you okay?" she asked. Naomi exhaled. "I'm tired of being okay." They got into the car. Naomi didn't speak for several blocks. Finally, she asked, "Did you record it?" Mia blinked. "I didn't need to. Look." She turned her phone. 2 Twitter accounts had already posted short clips of the scene. One labeled, "This woman got disrespected depositing $50,000 at Sovereign Bank. Watch what happens." The comments were flooding in. "This is why we need black-owned banks. I would have thrown that money back in his face. She handled that with pure grace. We stan a composed queen." Naomi read the words. Then read them again. She opened her own social account. No caption. No hashtags. Just the video. She posted it. Mia stared. "You sure you want that out there?" Naomi looked out the window. "It's already out there. Might as well be told right." That evening, Colin sat in the branch manager's office. His face was pale. His hands trembled. The manager had seen the video. Head office had seen the video. And now, Sovereign's legal team had seen it too. "Do you know who she was?" the manager asked, his voice low. Colin swallowed. "Some rich lady. She's Dr. Naomi Ellis. Tech mogul. Forbes top 20. She has more financial power in her signature than you've seen in your lifetime." Colin didn't speak. The manager leaned in. "And she might just take down this entire partnership because you didn't like how she looked holding cash." The floor beneath them felt suddenly unsteady. Back in her penthouse suite, Naomi stared out over the skyline. The city twinkled beneath her. But tonight, it didn't look powerful. It looked fragile. She placed the stack of bills on her desk, this time, not to deposit, but as a reminder. Sometimes, the loudest revolution begins with the softest refusal. The executive boardroom on the 42nd floor of Any Solutions headquarters was quieter than it had ever been. 10 people sat around the long obsidian glass table, each with a tablet, a legal pad, or a laptop before them, yet no one moved. The walls, usually lined with dynamic data dashboards and glowing maps, were dimmed. The windows framed the city's skyline, golden under the setting sun, but inside, the mood was heavy, still, waiting. Naomi sat at the head of the table. Her fingers were folded. Her expression unreadable. At the center of the table sat the leather briefcase. Unopened. Everyone in that room knew what was inside, $50,000 in cash, freshly deposited from the bank where their CEO had been humiliated just hours earlier. "I want to talk about the deal," Naomi said finally, her voice calm but cold. No one dared interrupt. The Polaris partnership was supposed to represent a global expansion, AI defense architecture, adaptive analytics, and vertical integration with European systems. The signing was scheduled for tonight. Champagne was chilled. Lawyers were ready. Contracts printed. She paused. "But this morning, I was treated like a criminal for trying to deposit a fraction of our worth." A fraction. And not by a stranger on the street, but by Sovereign Bank. Our transaction partner. Polaris's financial backbone. The air in the room was tight. Layla, general counsel, glanced toward Ron, the CTO, who remained still. Naomi nodded once. "I'm not afraid of waves." The room returned to silence. Then Mia, her assistant, tapped her tablet and slid it to Naomi. "You should see this," she said softly. On screen was a live news broadcast. The headline: Tech CEO disrespected by bank, footage sparks viral outrage. The clip played. Grainy but clear. Naomi. The teller. The falling stack of money. Her calm voice. Her spine straight. The anchor's voice cut in. Dr. Naomi Ellis has not released a formal statement. But inside sources suggest the multi-billion-dollar deal with Polaris Tech may be in jeopardy. Naomi closed the tablet. She stood. "I don't need to release a statement," she said. "I am the statement." That evening, Polaris executives called again. Not once, not twice, but 5 times. Naomi let the first 4 ring. On the 5th, she answered. It wasn't Marcus this time, but his senior liaison, a woman named Alina Kruger. Her voice was rushed. Polished, but nervous. "Dr. Ellis, I wanted to personally apologize on behalf of Polaris for the experience you had at Sovereign. I hope you know we take these matters seriously." Naomi's voice was neutral. "Do you?" Alina hesitated. "Of course. Sovereign has already begun an internal investigation. The teller has been suspended pending review." Naomi exhaled slowly. "Do you know how many times I've heard that phrase in my life? Pending review is just corporate for, wait until it blows over." "No, no," Alina replied quickly. "This is different. We value you. We respect you." Naomi let the silence stretch. Then, "Do you bank with them personally?" "Yes," Alina said. "And now you know how they treat people who look like me," Naomi replied. "You think this is about money. It's not. It's about trust. And once it breaks, especially in silence, it doesn't come back easily." Alina's voice dropped. "Are you officially withdrawing from the deal?" Naomi paused, then answered, "I'm officially re-evaluating who deserves my time." And then she hung up. In her penthouse later that night, Naomi stood barefoot on the balcony, wrapped in a silk robe, sipping mint tea. Below, the city pulsed. Neon. Noise. Never resting. Behind her, Mia was on the phone. Yes, she said. She's aware of the CEO Council asking for a statement. No, she won't be issuing one tonight. No press. No interviews. She's letting the silence speak. She hung up and joined Naomi outside. Investor Relations is asking what to say if stockholders call. Tell them it's business as usual, Naomi said. And if they ask about the partnership? Tell them values are more valuable than dollars. Mia hesitated. They won't like that. They don't have to. Naomi set her cup down. The truth is, Mia, I've walked into rooms my whole life where I've had to explain who I was, prove it over and over, just to be treated like a placeholder. I thought money would change that. Degrees. Success. Respect. But today proved, some people only see what they expect to see. Mia nodded quietly. And what do you want them to see now? Naomi turned back to the city lights. I want them to see what silence looks like when it has power. Downstairs, in a dimly lit editing bay, Naomi's in-house media team quietly prepped a video. They weren't told what it was for. Only that the clips must be precise, unedited, and time-stamped. A title card sat on screen. What happens when power is dropped on the floor? The footage faded in. Naomi's calm voice. The cash falling. The hush in the bank. The walk out. No music. No anger. Just truth. The kind that didn't need to scream. The kind that made entire boardrooms sit in silence, and listen. The city never truly sleeps. It exhales in quieter ways, through blinking traffic lights, muted sirens in the distance, and the occasional rumble of a train below the pavement. From her penthouse suite, Naomi Ellis watched the slow pulse of midnight unfold like a breath held too long. She hadn't changed clothes. Still in her robe, barefoot, eyes scanning the skyline, mind miles away. Her phone buzzed. Incoming call, Marcus Vole, Polaris Global. She let it ring twice before answering. Marcus. His voice was calm, practiced. Naomi. I trust it's not too late. She gave a low, tired smile. It's exactly the hour when powerful men like you call powerful women like me to clean up what their institutions messed up. There was a pause. Then, may I speak frankly? You're already behind. Marcus exhaled audibly on the other end. What happened today was inexcusable. I've spoken with Sovereign's executive board. They've issued a formal apology and requested a closed-door meeting with you. They want to make amends. Naomi's voice was glass. They dropped my dignity on the floor, Marcus. Their apology came only after the world started watching. They're offering full public acknowledgement. Staff retraining. A direct donation to a cause of your choosing. Reparations wrapped in PR, impressive. Marcus paused again. We want this partnership, Naomi. Sovereign is willing to sweeten the deal. We'll double the liquidity cushion. Adjust equity clauses. You'll have complete brand control across joint press releases. You'd walk away more powerful than ever. She stared at the ceiling for a moment. I already am. But think of the change you could make from inside the deal. Naomi didn't respond. He continued, his tone more urgent now. You could use their platform to elevate others. Make the story about resilience, transformation, redemption. Naomi finally spoke, her voice razor sharp. That's the problem, Marcus. Black women are always expected to turn trauma into teachable moments. We carry the burden, absorb the blows, and smile through the blood. I'm tired of being inspirational. I want to be respected. A long silence fell between them. Then she added, and I refuse to hand-deliver a billion-dollar partnership into the hands of people who wouldn't hand me a receipt without questioning my presence. Marcus softened his voice. Please don't mistake our support for manipulation. I'm not, she replied. But don't mistake my silence for indecision. And with that, she ended the call. In the dim office below her penthouse, Mia sat at her desk, illuminated only by the soft glow of multiple screens. She watched comment threads scroll endlessly. Naomi Ellis is rewriting the playbook. This isn't just about banking. It's about dignity. Would this have happened to a white male CEO? Never. Her inbox pinged with requests, CNN, BBC, Bloomberg, Good Morning America. Everyone wanted a statement, a sit-down, a soundbite. Naomi refused them all. No need to speak when the world already was. The door opened. Naomi entered, barefoot, calm, cup of water in hand. They're scrambling, Mia said. Naomi sat across from her. Let them. Stockholders are nervous. Polaris's board wants a reassurance call first thing in the morning. Naomi sipped her water. Then they'll be wide awake. Mia hesitated. Naomi. I have to ask. Are we pulling out of the deal? Naomi looked her in the eyes. What do you think? I think you already made your decision. You're just giving them time to feel the weight of it. Naomi smiled faintly. Exactly. At 2:11 a.m., Sovereign CEO emailed Naomi directly. The subject line read, a personal apology and request. Naomi didn't open it. She forwarded it to Layla, her general counsel, with one line. File it under, too late. Elsewhere in the city, behind polished glass walls and boardroom tables, men in tailored suits stared at phones they couldn't put down. One senior executive at Polaris barked at his team. She's bluffing. She wants leverage. Another shook his head. You didn't see her face. That woman doesn't bluff. A third checked social analytics. Engagements over 5 million. Half the viewers are from investor accounts. The optics are brutal. In Sovereign's legal office, a crisis team worked through the night, drafting public statements, prepping HR protocols, and calculating the fallout. She didn't raise her voice, one intern muttered. She just walked out. The room went quiet. That was the point. By 3 a.m., the briefcase with the cash was no longer on Naomi's desk. Instead, it sat in a vault 2 floors down, locked behind biometric security. Not because she was afraid to lose it, but because she knew its value had already multiplied, not as currency, but as symbol. At dawn, Naomi stepped out onto her balcony. The city glowed beneath a pink-orange sky, unaware that it was about to wake up to headlines it couldn't ignore. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't even hurt. She was ready. Mia joined her with 2 cups of fresh coffee. You sleep at all? Naomi smiled. Not really. What now? Naomi took a sip. Now, we let them watch the sun rise without us. At 6 a.m., Naomi sent one final message to her team. Subject: decision finalized. Body: effective immediately, we are withdrawing from the Polaris partnership. The future of our company will not be tied to institutions that cannot recognize our worth without a viral video to remind them. Let the silence speak. The morning air buzzed before the news even broke. By 8 a.m., the Wall Street Ledger had confirmed it. NE Solutions withdraws from $2 billion Polaris partnership amid racial bias scandal. The headline spread like fire across business channels, social media, and investor blogs. At Sovereign Bank headquarters, the mood was tense. Board members huddled in private calls. PR teams scrambled to rewrite pre-approved statements. One executive stared at the glass conference table and muttered, "We never even said her name." Across the city, at the New York Commercial Ethics Tribunal, where institutional conflicts were often reviewed, a judge sat in quiet contemplation. His name was Judge Walter Bremen. He was 68 years old, white, seasoned, with 3 decades of legal integrity behind him. He had presided over major corporate misconduct cases, stock manipulations, even billion-dollar fraud hearings. But this was different. Not because of the legal implications, there weren't any formal complaints yet. Not because of the scale, he'd seen deals larger than $2 billion fall apart before. It was the silence. The power of Naomi Ellis's refusal. No court filing. No angry speech. Just the quiet thunder of walking away. And that silence had unsettled everything. Judge Bremen sat in his chambers, a steaming mug of black coffee untouched beside him, watching Naomi's now viral footage for the 3rd time. The teller. The counter. The falling cash. Her composure. And the line that echoed across every news site. "You disrupted me. You disrespected me. You assumed something about me because of what I look like and what I carry. But what I carry is not just money, it's ownership. And you dropped it." He paused the clip. Rewound it. Played it again. Each time, it disturbed something deeper. Not just what had happened, but what had been allowed to happen, what had been normalized, what had been ignored by men like him who thought neutrality was justice. He had never met Naomi Ellis. But he knew her kind. Brilliant. Composed. Impossibly resilient. And constantly underestimated. At 10:15 a.m., a quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. His law clerk, a young woman named Ria, South Asian, bright, sharp, entered with a file. "Sir, you asked for Sovereign's corporate ethics record. And, there's something else." She hesitated. He gestured for her to continue. Ria placed a printed comment thread from Sovereign's internal staff network on his desk. At the top, a line from one of their regional directors read, "Look, she's a drama queen. She staged it for attention. I've seen her kind." Beneath it, several likes. No pushback. Just digital nods of agreement. Judge Bremen stared at the words. She staged it. She's a drama queen. She's kind. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. Not illegal. But undeniably revealing. Meanwhile, at NE Solutions, Naomi was already 3 moves ahead. She had gathered her internal leadership in a smaller, more intimate room than before. No formal conference table. No projection screens. Just a circle of trust. They weren't talking about Sovereign anymore. They were talking about what came next. Naomi stood at a whiteboard covered in dry erase notes and phrases. Foundational Equity Fund. Financial Literacy Hubs. New Black-Owned Banking Alliance. Redefining Capital. Every door they try to close, she said, we'll replace with an open window. We're not fighting for a seat at their table anymore. We're building our own. Layla nodded. We're already fielding calls from 5 international firms offering alternate funding. Zero ties to sovereign. Naomi smiled. Good. But make sure they don't just want proximity to the moment. We're not for rent. Laughter rippled around the room. Light, but powerful. Back in his chambers, Judge Bremen sat in stillness. He knew Naomi's actions didn't technically require judicial review. There was no case. And yet, he felt compelled. Compelled to write something. Not a ruling. Not a judgment. But a letter. He opened a legal pad and began. To Dr. Naomi Ellis. I am a man who has spent most of his life believing that fairness and neutrality were the same thing. That by withholding judgment, I was doing my job. That by refusing to take sides, I was ensuring justice. Your silence shattered that illusion. In watching you stand there, without rage, without theatrics, without desperation, I realized that I have misunderstood silence all my life. Silence is not always neutrality. Sometimes, silence is indictment. Sometimes, silence is protest. Sometimes, silence is a blade sharper than any verdict I could hand down. What was dropped on that floor was not just money, it was a mirror. And many of us saw ourselves in it. He paused. And added. Thank you for showing us what integrity looks like when it doesn't ask for permission. He signed it without title. Just. Walter. Then he sealed it in an envelope and addressed it personally to her office. At 4:42 p.m., Naomi received it. She opened it slowly, standing by her window again. The sun was beginning to dip. When she finished reading, she didn't speak. She simply closed her eyes. Not in triumph. Not in sadness. But in knowing. Knowing that even a judge, sworn to silence, had finally heard her. The letter from Judge Walter Bremen sat quietly on Naomi's desk, folded with care and weighted with meaning. No one else in her office had read it. No press release. No camera crew. Just a handwritten note from a man who, for once in his life, let justice move him instead of protocol. Naomi tucked the letter into a drawer and stared at the skyline again. A storm was building, internally and externally. Not the destructive kind, but the kind that cleared everything fake, leaving only what's rooted. Her phone buzzed again. This time, not a call. A text. Pastor Samuel. If you're ready, we'd be honored to have you speak Sunday. She stared at the message. Her faith had always been quiet. Private. Personal. But something in her had shifted. Not because she wanted to lead. But because people had started looking to her, not as a CEO, but as a compass. She replied. I'll be there. Sunday morning, Southside Chapel. The church was simple, red bricks faded from sun, stained glass worn, pews smooth from decades of leaning into hope. Naomi had grown up here. Her mother used to hum while braiding her hair in the third row. She'd walked out those double doors at 18 with a scholarship in one hand and a suitcase in the other. Now she walked back in, not as a daughter of the congregation, but as someone the world had watched all week. The room was packed. Journalists hadn't been invited, but that didn't stop whispers from trailing behind her as she walked down the aisle. Children peeked out from behind their mothers. Elderly women nodded slowly. Young entrepreneurs took notes without paper. At the pulpit stood Pastor Samuel, a stout man in his 60s with tired eyes and a thunderous voice when needed. "This morning," he said, "we won't be preaching from Proverbs. We'll be listening to one." He stepped aside. Naomi climbed the 3 steps slowly. She wasn't nervous. But she was measured. The room went silent. Not out of obligation, but reverence. She looked out at the faces. Faces like hers. Faces that had been judged. Overlooked. Faces carrying stories no balance sheet could measure. She didn't begin with a quote. She didn't begin with a prayer. She began with a question. "How many of you," she said softly, "have had to shrink yourselves to survive?" Hands went up. Eyes watered. Naomi took a breath. "Last week, I was humiliated in a place where my money spoke louder than my name. And even though I was calm, even though I never raised my voice, even though I've built a company that employs hundreds, someone still saw me as a threat. Not because of what I did, but because of what I looked like." A murmur rippled through the room. "But I want to tell you something important. Something my mother taught me long before I was Dr. Ellis, before Forbes, before business deals." She paused. She said, "Never let the world make you forget what God already confirmed in you." Voices whispered amen. Naomi continued. "That bank teller didn't see a CEO. But that's okay. I didn't need him to. Because I already knew who I was. And you must know who you are, long before someone tries to tell you otherwise." People were nodding now. "I've heard a lot of people this week say I was graceful. Composed. A role model. But let me be honest with you. There was a moment I wanted to flip that entire counter and let rage speak louder than reason." A soft laugh spread across the pews. "But I didn't. Not because I was weak, but because I chose faith over fury." Pastor Samuel whispered, "That's right." Naomi looked directly at the front row. "And make no mistake, family, choosing faith is a trial. Not a gesture. It's hard. Especially when the world profits from your silence, but mocks your voice. When they expect you to break, just so they can say they were right about you all along." More nods. A few tears. "I walked out of that bank, not with $50,000 in my hand, but with every ancestor who was denied, disrespected, discarded, walking with me. I walked with Harriet. I walked with Shirley. I walked with my mother. And now, I walk for every young girl watching this who needs to know, dignity is not something they can drop on the floor." The church erupted in claps and, "Yes, Lord." Naomi held up one hand, steady. "And I didn't make a public statement because I didn't need to explain what was obvious. We've been explaining for centuries. Now is the time to demonstrate." The room stood. No one asked them to. Naomi stepped back. But before she sat down, she said one final thing. "I won't carry rage. I'll carry fire. The kind that lights paths. Not burns bridges." And with that, she sat down. After the service, an elderly woman approached her slowly. Worn hands. Crooked spine. Fierce eyes. She touched Naomi's cheek. "Baby," she said, "you didn't just refuse the deal. You refused their leash." Naomi blinked back emotion. "I didn't plan to become a symbol. That's the thing about storms, the woman said. They don't plan either. But they change everything they touch. By evening, someone had posted a recording of her sermon. It wasn't Naomi. It wasn't the church. Just someone sitting in the back row who knew what the world needed to hear. It trended within an hour. Hashtag faith over fury. Hashtag Naomi speaks. Hashtag the CEO who walked away. And across boardrooms, bedrooms, and broadcast networks, something shifted. Not in noise, but in faith. Monday morning dawned without warning. No fanfare. No apology from the sky. Just light cutting through city buildings, illuminating a world that had changed, and didn't quite know what to do with that change. Naomi stood in her office barefoot, her heels placed neatly by the door. She wore a charcoal gray suit today, soft silk blouse beneath. No jewelry. No watch. Her phone buzzed, but she ignored it. The briefcase, the same one that carried the $50,000 now immortalized on the internet, sat unopened on the table behind her, its contents irrelevant. Because the real deposit had already been made. In the public consciousness. In the corridors of power. And in Naomi herself. Downstairs, the lobby of Any Solutions buzzed. Reporters waited across the street behind velvet ropes. Staff murmured softly, wondering whether Dr. Ellis would speak today, whether she'd announce a new deal, whether she'd finally give the speech the media had been waiting for. But Naomi wasn't preparing a press conference. She was preparing something else. At 9:05 a.m., Mia entered her office, holding a tablet. Her eyes wide. Her face stunned. They just released a statement, she said. Naomi didn't turn. Sovereign? No, Mia replied. Polaris. Naomi slowly turned around. Mia handed her the device. Naomi read. Official statement from Polaris Global Technologies. After careful consideration and in light of recent events, Polaris will be terminating all contractual affiliations with Sovereign Bank. We are committed to equity, dignity, and partnerships that reflect our deepest values. Our future dealings will align with those who understand that access without respect is not access at all. Marcus Vole, Executive Chairman. Naomi's hands didn't tremble. But she smiled for the first time in days, not out of pride, but recognition. Something had finally cracked open. They felt it, she whispered. The shift. By mid-afternoon, Sovereign stock had fallen 11%. Several large accounts withdrew. Their CEO issued a televised apology, complete with forced humility and promises of transformation. But Naomi didn't respond. She didn't retweet. She didn't post. She didn't clap back. She didn't need to. The silence had already done the talking. At 3 p.m., Naomi called an internal meeting, only her core leadership team. Not in the boardroom, but in the community strategy lab 2 floors below. A space filled with whiteboards, beanbags, and open space. The future didn't need mahogany tables, it needed movement. She stood before them, not as a CEO above them, but among them. I want to tell you what happens next, she said. Every eye turned to her. We're not going to chase validation anymore. We're not going to partner with institutions hoping they'll treat us better when they see our value. They've seen it. And they still failed. She paced slowly, hands open. We're going to launch a platform that funds, elevates, and protects the next generation of Black entrepreneurs, women in finance, and young people who don't want to knock on doors, they want to build new ones. Excitement stirred in the room. Phase 1 begins next quarter. We launch 3 financial literacy centers in underserved cities: Chicago, Atlanta, Oakland. Mia beamed. Phase 2, we partner with Black-owned banks and credit unions. Inject capital. Launch digital platforms. Make them tech-ready. We become their infrastructure. Layla leaned forward. This is a whole new business arm. Naomi smiled. It's a whole new mission. One I wish someone had created when I was 18. She paused. And phase 3, we launched the Fund for Unapologetic Leadership. Grants. Legal defense. Press support. Political training. For anyone who risks their seat at the table by refusing to lower their voice. Ron, the CTO, whispered, "We're building a nation." Naomi nodded. "We are." That evening, Naomi finally sat alone. No noise. No cameras. Just the low hum of city life outside her window. She picked up her journal. She hadn't written in weeks. But now, the words came like breath. Dear me. You didn't lose anything. You didn't fail anyone. You didn't need the deal to prove your worth. You walked away from the money. But you walked into your power. And sometimes the awakening doesn't come with fire. It comes in quiet, in breath, in dignity that refuses to bow. Stay the course. Burn nothing but fear. N. She closed the journal, letting the words linger like perfume in the air. Across the internet, people were still watching. Clips from the church service. The bank footage. Snippets of her interviews from years ago resurfaced, stitched together by strangers into a digital mosaic of black excellence and quiet rebellion. People weren't just talking about what she had done. They were talking about what she had refused to do. She had refused to yell. Refused to beg. Refused to shrink. And that refusal had awakened something. Somewhere in the South Bronx, a young girl printed Naomi's picture and pinned it to her bedroom wall. In Oakland, a community organizer named Latrice held a meeting that night and said, "If Naomi can walk away from $2 billion, I can walk away from the table they keep asking me to eat crumbs at." In London, a journalist pitched a feature titled, "The Woman Who Spoke with Her Silence." And in Nairobi, a group of young tech developers changed the name of their startup to Ellis Rise. Naomi lay in bed, phone screen dark, city glowing beyond her window. She didn't feel like a hero. She didn't feel like a warrior. She felt human. But more than that, she felt free. Because when the world expects you to scream, sometimes the greatest revolution is choosing not to. Sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is walk away.